I'll call this public hearing to order. Um, Davenport Community School District in the counties of Scott and Muscatine, state of Iowa, is the owner of real estate known as Buchanan Elementary School, 4515 North Fairmount Street, Davenport, Iowa. The Board of Directors of the school district will consider adoption of the following resolution for the sale of the real estate described herein at a meeting to be held on December 11th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Resolved that the Davenport Community School District in the counties of Scott and Muscatine, state of Iowa, shall sell the above described real estate pursuant to a contract of sale. Further resolved that the president and secretary are hereby authorized to execute and deliver a contract of sale and a quitclaim deed for the school district, conveying all of the school district's rights, title, and interest in and to the above described real estate, and are further authorized to take such further actions as are necessary or desirable to complete said sale, and all such actions are ratified and confirmed. The district has received a contract for the purchase the real estate for $825,000 from the Quad City Veterans Outreach Center. Before taking final action on December 11th, 2023, the Board of Directors is required to hold this public hearing on the sale of the above described real estate. The purpose of the public hearing is not an auction, and the board will not accept verbal offers for the purchase of the real estate. All offers must be made in writing through the district's real estate broker, Mel Foster Commercial. The district will continue to receive written offers for the purchase real estate through December 8th, 2023 at noon. The district reserves the right to extend or waiver this deadline. Any offers received before the deadline will be considered by the Board of Directors at its meeting on December 11th, 2023. The real estate will be sold subject to the following restricted covenant. No part of the property shall be used by any person or entity at any time as a child care / daycare facility or a preschool or a school with any levels of kindergarten through 12th grade or any combination thereof. Davenport Community School District reserves to itself the right to enforce this restriction as to any owner or occupant of the property in the future. The Board of Directors will not be discussing the sale of the real estate during the public hearing. The public hearing is so interested members of the public may make oral comments to the Board of Directors for its consideration before taking final action on the sale of real estate. Comments must be related to the sale of real estate and should be limited to no more than 2 minutes. The public hearing is now open, and members of the public wanting to comment the board regarding proposed sale may address the Board of Directors at this time. You may step forward to the microphone, or if anyone wants to participate virtually, call 1-312-626-6799 and enter meeting ID 95328157835 and passcode 407612. Please state your name and address for the record. I have 2 requests right now. Edwin Hildebrandt and John Gerard. If Edward would please, or Edwin, I'm sorry, would please step up to the podium with the microphone and push the button so the green light comes on. Okay, thank you. Would Mr. Gerard want to step up? Okay. Is there anyone else? Do we have anyone phoning in online? No? Okay. Is there anyone else? Anyone else? If there are no other members of the public who want to address the board at this time, I declare the public hearing to be closed. We're done with the public hearing. We'll move on to our committee of the whole.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. All right. Good. I now call the committee of the whole meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first subject up for discussion is 1.03 update on turf fields and the Sudlow projects, review of other phase 1 projects. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. Today we have both Johns are going to give us an update on our facility plan, and we also have our athletic directors here. So thank you guys for coming. Tammy, thank you for being here to answer any questions that we may have.
Good evening, and thanks for having both John and me, John, as well. So we thought it would be pertinent to just kind of walk through some of the phase 1 master plan items to date. A good portion of it are projects that John Flynn has been directly involved with, which is the Sudlow Intermediate and the Turf Fields project. So to start, though, we thought we would walk through a little bit of what's been happening at West High School. That project is moving along. We had a rainy end of summer, beginning of fall, so that delays the ability to start masonry, but all of our footings and foundations got in, our underfloor rough ends, which is storm sewer, water, sanitary sewer, some other miscellaneous piping. The big thing is concrete block has started, and so the walls are going up vertically. Some of our mechanical equipment has arrived on site. Some of our steel materials are arriving on site, so that's a good situation for just being able to continue to work. There have been about 250 submittals, which is just our process of checks and balances of making sure that all the right materials and equipment's being ordered for the job, and those get processed early on so that those orders can happen through the sequence of the project. So when you look at some of the pictures, what used to be where the camera is in the left photo would have been parking lot, looking back towards the doorway that would have come out of the end of the gym corridor. The Y gym is off to one side, but the right-hand photo is the little alcove, the former door to get into the hallway by the YMCA gym is right there to the right. This is all area where we're going to get new restrooms. Our mechanical equipment gets built on a little second story level. As we kind of scroll back, this is looking from the east. I'm standing next to the Y gym, looking back at the building. These are windows of the new fitness room. So we scroll a little further. That is a new wall that's built alongside the YMCA gym. That's the new roof structure line up above that separates. So this is this big area is the new gym that gets constructed. These images are about a week and a half old, so more has happened since then. And with the weather staying mild as it is, we're in good shape to continue working there, and cross your fingers that it doesn't get super cold and stays mild, because it is very conducive for continuing to work there. So then that puts us to the intermediate schools, Sudlow and Smart. The reason I mentioned Smart is because the demolition projects at Washington and Monroe are critical to the ability to do the projects for expansion and renovation at Washington and Monroe. So if you've driven around Locust and Eastern area, you'd notice that the skyline's a little different there. Washington is down. The basement was removed over the past few weeks. They've been filling in that basement, just increasing the amount of dirt that's there. This week they were going to work on hopefully get to bringing the rest of the grade down, so bringing some of the earth down so that that's more on par with the level of the Sudlow site. Monroe had been fenced, the utilities were disconnected. They were hoping either this week or next to start actually demolishing the building. So that will start to come down soon. So when you look at Sudlow, it's kind of hard to tell from these images, but it's missing a building, and what you're seeing is the dirt that's just being filled in and worked around that site. When we look at Monroe, we see the fence around the perimeter. This building will start coming down, and then those crews will go back and start filling in the site area.
And I believe the demolition has already started at Monroe. I think a picture I saw, there was some wall that's been knocked down already.
Thanks. I didn't drive there this week yet. So that puts us at Sudlow. So Sudlow is a process that's long moving, and it's moving quickly. We've had a lot of different things happening, but there's a committee, we call it a core planning team. We call it CPT for short, but that's a group of people that includes Josh Romansky, Joe Reagan, the principal Tanya, the assistant principal, and then occasionally we might get another visitor, but that is our standing group that meets on a bi-weekly basis. That started as soon as you guys said we should start moving on the project, that group started meeting. That is the core decision-making team. There's involvement of other people through the process, but it all funnels through that core planning team, which helps keep the decision-making to a tight group of decision-makers that need to be involved with that. It's been very beneficial to have John's involvement as an ILD in the district. He's really helped guide the decisions that need to be made on that building. Early on in the process, beginning of October, the first thing we did was an all-staff engagement session. It's not a deep and intensive thing. It's more just an informational explanation of what's going to happen to the building, what the timeline is, and then also a reach out to the staff to say, hey, we want to talk to you more. We'll be in touch soon. And the staff responded well. I think the entire staff stuck around the day that they were there, past their meeting hours just to listen to this. They were extremely excited, asked a lot of good questions. It was a really nice session. Well, as a result of that, we set up the meetings where we come back to talk to them. We had two sessions, one in early November, one in mid-November. We actually have another one this week. These are days where our team sits down with the Sudlow team from about 8 in the morning till just a little after noon. We have intensive sessions. They're anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour and a half for different groups of individuals. So we break them up based on subject matter or type of curricula they teach or specialty of interest. So if you might think of PE department or Creative Arts Academy or library, special education, you name it, we work through all those. The idea is for them to help provide us with information that helps refine the plan so that the building will respond to their needs in a way that helps them better deliver the curricula to the student. These are really important. We won't be done with these sessions in December. We're taking that information. It's helping influence our drawings. Once we get past the first of the year, we'll come back to them again and look for further refinements. It's kind of a process of fine tuning. So early on, it's big moves. We're moving chess pieces on the board. Later on, we're going to do real fine-tuned moves, just pinpointing the needs for what the teachers are going to need to have in their building. The other big thing that has happened since we started this project is we really had to identify what does a house model mean. I mean, this is a different concept for that building. So we went through a lot of exercises to try to figure out what a house model would be and what that meant for how people had to live in the building. And that took some effort. We also needed to figure out how can we work around this idea of expanding the building and keeping students in the building at the same time. That's also not an easy one. So that has a big influence on the plans that you'll see. We also talked about site logistics. What are some of the things that work and don't work, and how can we try to make things better? And then lastly, what becomes real exciting for everybody is what does a new building need to look like? And so we've talked a lot about that because we want to make sure that it represents what the district wants, not what us, the architects, want. And so we hope we're responding to that well. So on to the pretty pictures. Google shows the site kind of looking as you'd expect. The Sudlow building on the left, the Washington pre-demolition on the right, with our parking lot area stretching in between. We have this large green space down in the south end in between the two buildings. The concept to start is that we're going to keep the existing gym, but we've also worked out a model that allows us to keep the existing entry that was added in the 10 years ago or less. So it's relatively new. And we've actually worked out a plan that lets us keep the 69 addition to the building. It is a 3-story addition that holds a lot of the arts programs in it. And so we think there's a solution that helps us with the phasing of how we produce what we're constructing, but it also provides a solution that works very well in the end. What you see in the white is new construction. And then off to the right where Washington once sat, we're going to utilize that area to provide the walking track that surrounds a small practice football field, which is also green space that can be used for outdoor activities and play. The playground structures that were formerly sitting where my cursor's moving are going to move down closer to the building, so we'll still have play structures on site. We also have some different insets to the building. One is a nice courtyard that's framed in between the academic wings of the building. And then we have another spot that is green space that predominantly will get used for outdoor activities, predominantly PE class. We're keeping the outdoor classroom. And then we're going to make use of the ingress and egress lanes for the building. However, we're going to try to separate off things to improve some site logistics, bring parent drop-off through this parking lot, and have our bus drop-off as an inset from the street on Pleasant Street. So try to better separate where cars and buses go. We're going to maintain parking along the west side of the building, provide a little bit of a drive-in, which will help us get any vehicles that need to transport music equipment for the CAA. There's actually a parking lot across the street that we maintain, so our disruption to the site does not diminish the amount of parking on site. When we look at the floor plan, we just take this building footprint and blow it up so that you can see that building sitting on the site. What we're looking at is in gray, the existing gymnasium. This piece in the center is the existing office entry piece. And then just to the left of that is our, currently at the first floor level is our cafeteria. So off to the right, we're building a new main entry, secure entrance to the building, new administrative office. This is consolidated administration. So we have our building administration, our counselors, and our nurse will all fit into this footprint. We have some public bathrooms and then a nice big commons cafeteria space. That commons cafeteria, we wanted to think about that as a nice big gathering space for the student body in the building, but also as a community asset. You know, when we do have our community come into our buildings and being right off the secure entry, that's a focal point where the community can come in. What you're seeing is a red block in the middle is a stair feature that takes you up to the second floor. We have our kitchen and serving, and we also have some tech ed shop space on this floor level. These wings that stick out, they look like little appendages hanging down. These are our academic houses on either side. So the consideration was that we had a hallway surrounded by the core curricula and support classrooms needed for each house in its own secure wing. So there's a doorway to get into that house. Each house for a grade level is on the same floor level, and there are some additional academic support spaces or elective type spaces in between. So if you imagine 8th grade being on the first floor, we would have House A and House B flanking some space that supports the whole building in between. At this ground level, just outside of that, we have a nice outdoor courtyard. So some hard paved space with tables, chairs, a space for students to be if there's an outdoor lunch opportunity or some sort of outdoor program. But it's also a hardscape spot where students can be before or after school starts each day. This is a secondary entry to the building back here. It will have a covered canopy over it, so it can offer some protection from the elements. We do have a series of stairways and egress paths so students can easily get in and out of the building. As we come across this corridor, it would bring us over to this spot, which is a new 2-station gymnasium. So there's 2 side courts, and then spanning across that would be 1 main court, with the idea that a new gym would likely want to be the kind of the primary gym for any activities. This could serve as the main gym, and the existing could be a secondary, but this would allow us to easily handle all of the PE needs as well as the activities and athletics needs for the building. Some locker rooms, some storage space, and then the consideration is this 1969 wing, 3 stories, all stories becomes part of a CAA and arts wing for the building. So at the first floor level, we're going to put in a black box theater that's a little more appropriate to what the program is, as well as some support spaces. And then we're going to repurpose some of the space that was the first floor administration area. Also to note, we'll be able to separate off spots of the building so that the former security entry can serve as an activities entrance to the building, whereas the other end can be the academic entrance. If there's an event in the cafeteria commons, we can separate off the rest of the building. If there's an athletic event or a CAA event, we can separate off the activities from the academic wing. When we move up to second floor, our common space is a 2-story space. Right above our office and secure entry, we have a nice new library, a STEM space, STEM and technology space, as well as some staff amenities on that floor level. And then our 7th grade, House A and House B, right above our 8th grade, flanking some additional classroom and support spaces. And then our gymnasium would have an extra tall ceiling space, which would allow us to have a walking track indoor, so it's elevated walking track in that gym. And then we have some additional spaces adjacent to that. We have an art room and a nice mechanical space. We're keeping the stair tower that gets you up 3 floors in the existing. And then what you're seeing on the left is our 2nd floor, which is predominantly band and music spaces. When we jump up to the 3rd floor, then we have our 6th grade House A and House B with some additional classroom space. And at the left end, we have the remainder of the CAA program that's located on the 3rd floor in that 69 wing. So that's a lot in plan form. The staff seems to have responded very well to it. The core planning team really likes how this is coming together. I'm going to jump forward real quick, and then we can pause if there's any questions on this, because always the exciting thing is what's it going to look like. And so what you're seeing at the top of the screen is one big long flat view of what would be the north side of the building. This vantage point would be looking towards the new main entry to Sudlow. The team wanted to honor a bit of the lineage of the building, looking at some of the historic flair, the composition being in brick, but providing something that's a little bit new and contemporary, trying to merge those intonations that are seen in the existing building, such as a repeating arcade of pilasters, some of the brick coloring. But what you're seeing is some ribbon windows, some taller, skinnier windows. They're in a patterning that they worked out with the staff that felt some repetition or rhythm that harkens back to some of the artistic flair that's in the building. Nice big canopy outside with naming on the building, covering so that students waiting to get in the morning can have some protection from rain or snow. Nice tall glazing in that 2-story cafeteria area. Above on the right here is our new library and some staff support spaces. This is our existing gym. And what you're seeing in the end is that CAA wing and actually the existing entry into the building. Part of the challenge with the CAA end is to also do a little bit of aesthetic treatment to start to bring that into line with the rest of the building. If you drive by right now, you see about 3 different colors of brick on the building. That makes it a challenge. We're going to try to unify that as much as we can. When we flip around to the back, the perspective view is looking at one of the academic wings. This is that courtyard with the back door entry that comes into the backside of the cafeteria commons. A little bit of covering to offer some protection under roof before entering the door, and just some nice courtyard space. We have not figured out what that space is going to do yet. That's still some of the conversation we're having, but trying to provide lots of natural light into our classroom and academic spaces into the building, bringing some brick and some siding materials that allow us to relate back to that gymnasium and that office addition piece that are remaining. As we look a little bit to the left of that area, this is our new gymnasium area. So think about maybe some clear story windows that bring a little bit of natural light into that gymnasium, continuing some of our materials and aesthetics. We have not placed any graphics or things like that onto the facades yet. We're still developing these facades, but we will also be incorporating school logo and name where we can. And then what you're going to see as you look kind of at the west elevation, we're touching up to that old 69 wing, and we will work on changing the aesthetic of that so that it matches. So before I jump ahead, any questions on the Sudlow project?
Director Barnes.
John, when do you think you'll have phasing of this? I mean, this is great work, but as we think about minimizing disruption to learning and students, is that yet to come? I mean, are you still some distance from that?
We have an initial phasing. So the initial phasing would be a sequence of construct new addition, then knock down the existing, which would then allow us to construct the gym. As that starts to wrap up, then we would come back and remodel the CAA wing. By doing that, we can displace students from the CAA wing over to the new addition for the interim while we're doing some of that remodeling. We'll try to sequence some of that to take advantage of the longer period of summer breaks to get some of that done to minimize as much disruption as possible. But the big thing is we will construct the addition while leaving the existing intact. That would minimize the most disruption for just general curriculum.
Director Klein-Jerome.
If you go to either floor 2 or 3, right there, okay, is that white piece, is that where the elevator is going to be? Is that, I didn't hear the word elevator, but
So that's where the elevator currently lives, but we're actually moving it. We're putting an elevator down in the academic wing about this location, and then we're putting a second elevator over here. We originally tried to work around this elevator being here, but it's not in the best location for us. We do need to take advantage of the stair tower being where it's at because it does provide access to some mechanical space that will remain in the building. It provides access to our flow path. The elevator needs updated. So the difference of updating to what we need, it's actually a better spend of money to provide the right type and size of elevator closer to where the CAA wing is, and then a smaller passenger elevator down at the academic end. Does that
yeah,
make sense?
thanks.
Director Poston.
On the West project, part of the project was refurbishing in the main gym, which I believe included replacing the bleachers. Where are we on that as far as getting that done?
So the whole project at West is scheduled to be done in October of 24. We are shooting for that existing gym refurb to happen next summer. So the summer of 24 is what they're shooting for.
So it would be ready for the 2024 season then?
That's the goal, correct.
Director Hayes.
John, on slide number 22, what side of the building is that on?
This is the side of the building that faces Locust. So one of the things that the team really wanted to emphasize is that Sudlow is a building that has 2 front doors. So it has this really public main entry piece that's on Pleasant, but we really have to replicate that on the Locust Street side. And so what you're seeing is the same materials, the same logic, the same aesthetic wrap all the way around the building so that the average citizen of Davenport experiences it the same way as the families that send their students to Sudlow. If we think about the fact that people that don't send their kids to Sudlow will only probably ever see this from Locust. It's really important to make a statement aesthetically from that Locust Street side. And I think you'll have some nice wow factor there.
You mentioned that um, with the parking, will there be any additional parking over there?
I don't believe we're adding any additional, but we validated that we didn't think we needed any additional.
Okay. And my last question, with the playground equipment from Washington coming over there, is that age appropriate for them, or is just for neighborhoods children, or?
We still have to do an evaluation of the play equipment. So the initial consideration was to make sure we moved it. We still have to evaluate that we can and that it is the correct type of equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Director Potts.
And just to point out that Sudlow's address is on 1414 East Locust Street. Storage, in particular in PE, I think it's important. I think it's extreme. There's never enough for the ping pong tables, for the crash mats, and especially the wrestling mats. We used to store them in the cafeteria. So, I mean, I think, and chairs, storage for chairs for concerts and the like.
And that's one of the beauties of the plan right now is the flexibility that's kind of baked into the plan. There's some space that's available not only for indoor PE needs, but for outdoor PE/athletic needs. There's also some space at various points in the building that will allow us to make sure that things are taken care of so that they are taken care of, if that makes sense.
For storage directly, we got a tally of what all rooms are used for PE and athletic storage. We made sure the new storage room was that size and then some. So we think we've captured it all. The other thing to note is down on first floor, we parked a space off to one side that is storage for the outdoor that's accessible from the outdoor. So it's not an indoor storage room, it's an outdoor. And then the storage room for PE and athletics is this giant thing down here in the corner. So it's pretty good sized. It'll never be enough, but it's good sized.
Are we going to establish 2 serving lines in the lunch, or
2 serving lines. The space is allocated. The design is not solidified yet, but it is footprint predicated on 2 serving lines for efficiency.
it's important where they line up so that they're not lined up like into the lunchroom, because that creates a lovely screen behind which children might choose to throw things.
Principal Wilkins has expressed her opinion on how the lunch pattern might move, and has expressed many of the same concerns and desires in terms of how this could best be structured.
Good lines of sight. Don't serve grapes.
Ruben, you're up.
Sorry, I just want to say, as someone who went to Sudlow, the design is excellent. It's much better than it was, in my personal opinion. I love the north side, the way you did the parking or the inlet, dividing cars and buses. I know that was always a problem when I went there, but is there any talk at all or any plan at all to do something to improve the situation getting onto or off of Locust Street? I know when I went there, even now when I pick up my little siblings there, it's like driving to Chicago. It's like we've got our own little rush hour. And also I was almost hit by cars several times walking back home from Sudlow. So just in terms of the south side of the building bordering Locust, is there any way we've managed or planned out to reduce either the cars or the kids that are going to be walking
So the south side access is a challenging one. We discussed if there would be any merit to trying to get vehicular access to the south side. We thought that was both an expensive idea and not good for just logistics. We also didn't think the city would buy into any kind of drop off or turn lane on Locust. The signaled crossing, which is in alignment with the old main front door, will still remain. So we'll have that signaled crosswalk across the street. The Locust and Eastern crosswalk will still be signaled. We're trying to provide good connection down to the sidewalks. I'm not sure if there's a whole lot we can do to resolve the traffic flow bottlenecking that happens on Eastern and Locust or on the other side. That's a challenging one. Our first conversation with the city will occur in about a week, and that's going to be to discuss code and fire marshal concerns. Our next conversation with the city will be with respect to planning and some of our traffic and street things. So these are still developing conversations. It's never a problem for constituents of the city of Davenport to reach out to their alderman or local representative to discuss any of these concerns. It is going to boil down to some conversations about what we can do as a district versus what the city has to do as the municipality.
Director Barnes?
What is the number of students that this plan is predicated upon? I mean, I know we don't build a church for Christmas and Easter, but what is the number? And I think the other part of that question is, I know that the plan for the cafeteria is not finalized, but what's the number there that you're sort of thinking?
So we've got a building that we believe can house as many as 900. So that gives us good valves for capacity long-term. This is a building that seems to hold very stable with its enrollment, given the CAA component of the building. We are ensuring that we have adequate space there. For the cafeteria, we are, I believe it was 350 or 370 for a lunch period. We want to be able to do this in 3 lunch periods. What you see is sort of a U-shape. The idea is with, as Director Potts talks about, 2 serving lines, we could literally go lunch A, lunch B, and use the U-shape to facilitate a seating for lunch A and then lunch B, lunch C, lunch D. So it should work out well to handle that load. Hopefully that follows your logic as well.
Director Potts? Hang on one second, Bruce. Can you clarify what CAA is for the folks so they know? Because
Creative Arts Academy.
Thank you.
Have they had any conversations about entry in the morning at grades coming in different entryways so that you don't have
very initial conversations, and I think part of it is waiting until the plan is a little more solidified to start making those changes. When John was talking about the floors being grade, there's some very specific thinking going on in terms of separation, in terms of access. So that will continue to be a conversation point.
My question's on the West High project. Do you know when do they expect to have a lid on that? Because we're coming up on January, February, and it's going to get really cold, and they're going to be doing block work out there, and I haven't seen any scaffold up to build an enclosure or anything, so I was just kind of curious on that so we don't have delays.
My best understanding of that is they're going to sectionalize their tenting, so they'll just work piece by piece so they can keep going. I don't know that I have a clear indication of the lid because I think they're waiting to see what the cold weather snap does.
Okay.
Would you like to hear about turf fields? And thank you for all the good conversation on Sudlow. If I made you wait all the way to the end of this, you'd have forgot all your questions on that. So turf fields projects, we are talking about something that enhances opportunities for each of the 3 high schools as well as the district as a whole. This is a group that includes a core planning team as well. This also involves John Flynn, Josh Romansky, Joe Reagan, our principals, athletic directors. We've had a few different kind of meetings. This is not a group that meets on a bi-weekly basis, such as the Sudlow. This is a little bit different sort of process, but we've had some initial goal-setting meetings, needs assessment, needs discussion meetings. So we started with a kickoff meeting that talked through goals and needs and wants and what are the programs and problems that we needed to resolve with the process. Then we had a brainstorming session, and this was, we call it a charrette, but it's, we literally had giant printout plans of each of the sites. So think of a Google image just in high res blown up for each of the properties. And then we had just different cutout pieces, and we could mix and match and sort of come up with some ideas of how do we start solving these needs and wants. And that helped us respond to configuration, layout, size, capabilities and capacity of the solutions. That then put our planning team to work to literally draw up these solutions. So then what happened is we had a first design session review, which was the first shot at our design side capturing that brainstorming discussion. We were looking for feedback, revisions, refinements, things that needed to change. Did we listen to this right? Should this be a little different? And so we walked away from that first session with some feedback, which allowed us to do a second design review that was just held last week. We feel like those plans were in pretty good shape. So what I'm going to show you is a master plan. So we had a budget for turf for each of these projects, but we felt it was a good idea to master plan each campus. So we didn't have the budget, for example, to do a restroom and concessions building, but let's figure out where it goes and make sure that we have the appropriate plan to resolve what's needed to accommodate that, so that we clearly understand how that might need to happen, whether it's down the road from the district or if there's a fundraiser or however that's covered. So we have a master plan for North, we have a master plan for West, and then we have a master plan for the Brady Street complex. Each of these shows up in 2 forms. The first is what we call a phased plan, and it's the sequence of how we think the order of magnitude of priority is established. So for example, at North, you'll see a series of elements and then a description off to the left. So we have a new turf field. We have the existing driveway entry that's the kind of the east end entrance to the campus. The turf field needs to grow. The turf field that's at North is not wide enough to meet all regulation for competition soccer play. And so it has to grow a little bit, which means we need to shift the driveway over, but we can't move the signaled intersection there. So what you're seeing is a slight bend in the driveway, and then we're needing to grow a little bit to the north end of the field for that master plan. So maybe not right away, but long-term we would provide a space for concessions, restroom, team room kind of structure at the north end of the property. What you're seeing is I'm going to blow it up so it's a little easier. You're seeing the driveway in. There would be a nice fencing enclosure around what's being constructed. That fencing would give us some opportunity for maybe some branding mounted to the fencing, maybe some brick piers at the corners, something to dress it up. This is a soccer field that's sized to be used for high school competition. It would also work for postseason play. There's a ticket booth kind of main entry up here in the corner, not much different than how you get into the field currently, but this would enter into a nice large plaza space that would lead over to a concessions, locker room, team room structure. The idea of the plaza space is if you're waiting for concessions or you just got some food or beverage, you have some space to stand and hang out and watch a game that's going on. We have some separated bleachers, so think about a small home visitor bleachers. And then on this one, paved concourse, so there's a spot for parents and families to throw up some lawn chairs but not sink into any mud if it's a little bit wet out there. What you're seeing in green would all be turfed, so a turf field, size for soccer, striped for soccer could be striped, or the turf pattern could be handled for the increments needed for football. So this would be multi-sport, multi-activity used for PE class, whatever athletics need a surface that's usable at any time. Off to one side, there's adequate space for team benches and scoring tables. There's a little bit of additional parking that's shown down here just to the south end of the existing parking. That's twofold. We will take a little bit of space that currently is that lot adjacent to the YMCA pool, so we need to make sure we put back some additional spaces. But we also have an opportunity, if there's a future project to provide an expansion to the high school, we likely will infringe on some of the parking spots. So if prices work well and we can afford it, it could make sense to handle that now while we're doing site work. This plan takes away about 30 spots, and we have the opportunity to add 84 back. So that is north. Yeah.
Two things. With those parking spaces, we have to provide the same amount that we provide the Y currently. So we would shift that parking into the current student parking, which would necessitate the drawing, if that makes sense. And the second piece is, as this is drawn, with this being primarily a soccer field, it does open up the ability for lower level games and feeder games to be played. Currently, we're playing those at Brady. We're also playing those at Williams, at Wood, and we are not always able to take gate at those events. So it does provide us with the opportunity to do that as well, and to ensure that we're playing on a surface that isn't weather-wise getting beat up on all the time.
All right. So west is a little bit different. We have a soccer field that currently is really small. It's much smaller than the north field just in terms of width. It has adequate length. It's just very narrow. What you're seeing, this piece where the cursor is the current YMCA area. What's bounded in brown is the new addition, which is under construction. One goal that was held was to not only provide a turf field, but to get the throwing areas, so our discus and shot put, in a better location for the track team. So what you're seeing is a new soccer field. Again, like north, it's the same size of turf. This is sized for competition and postseason play. Home and visitor benches, left and right. I'm going to actually scroll to the one that's easier to read, doesn't have all the words. So a nice ticket booth fencing around the turf field area, ticket booth main entry gate onto the property, a nice plaza area, concrete plaza. Again, a location charted for a concessions, restroom, team room structure up in the upper right-hand corner. Then our turf field, home and visitor benches with some additional concrete for anyone that wants to bring lawn chairs and set up their own chair. What you're seeing here is just a little bit of rework of some of the driveway area. It doesn't show all the parking spots, but creating some opportunities for both parking as well as drive and drop off for ease of access and protection for those people that are parking and walking over to the event. So we would have parking along these drives as well. Maintaining the main drive that goes in and out of the east side of the campus. And what you're seeing adjacent to the field then is a new location for our shot put pit and then our discus throw. One thing that drives the location of the field is that it bounds kind of a steep slope to the south. So we cannot push too far to the south or we're going to be forced to buy expensive retaining walls. So we use this corner down in the lower left as sort of driving the starting point for the field. We do grow a little bit to the north, which has us changing the footprint. It does take up more footprint growing north. Working this through with Corey and Michelle, we feel that the solution as far as it responds to the site, the parking, and the walking access to the venue, this works well for the building. One of the things that was just discussed recently with the gym addition to this building is we did provide stubs for water and sewer right out the location where my cursor is right now. That is set with the goal that it would allow us a future connection to this building so we could add restrooms and concessions at some point. Anything else on West?
One of the things that Director Lillis talked about was just the importance of the throws area for the track team being in a different location than it currently is. If you've been by that facility, it leaves a little bit to be desired at this point in time, and this just makes it a better venue for our coaches to coach and our student athletes to practice and learn.
So that would then take us to the Brady Street complex. This is a much bigger plan because it is truly a master plan for not just the needs of Central High School, but for the district as a whole. So one of the goals right out of the gate was to move the baseball field from the south side of 36 to the north side. That gets the baseball field out of flood threats. It also allows us to get a better size and shape and configuration of that. So what you're seeing is a baseball field, a practice turf field, and then I'll describe some of the other pieces that float around that. This is the cleaned up version, and then I'm going to separate the south side of the street and the north side. The general consideration is that when the baseball field moves to the north, we really can't turf anything down in this area because it is prone to taking on flood. You don't want to put turf in a flood area or an area that gets too much water because the granules that are in the turf itself will wash away. But the consideration is that we can plant a nice grass field here. That grass field, we've put striping in there to validate that it is actually adequate size that it could be used as a secondary field for any activities for the district. So if there's a varsity event going on in the stadium and middle school also had a game, that could actually happen on this field adjacent to the stadium. You could think of any number of scenarios where something might be happening in the stadium and a secondary activity might want to happen in that grass field, let alone an additional practice or something else. The other thing is it gives us the ability to move our throw pits into a better location. So like what John just mentioned about West, we are talking about moving our throw events from the other side of the street to the same side of the street as the track and field events. So currently they're on the north side of the street. It requires our competitors, our participants, our families, our spectators, they all have to cross back and forth across the street. Keeping it on the same side is a safer situation. It should help streamline some of the logistics of how our events are run, and then it provides better safety. These are located up at the north end of this grass field. That keeps them out of that water zone, and we have adequate distance to provide our throw pit and our shot put zones. When the baseball field moves, we can expand the parking. So there's currently some parking on the east side of the stadium, looking to just provide some additional parking there. It's needed, it'll get used. So this is a good addition of parking to this side. In terms of the long-term master plan, a couple other things that we'll look at from a pricing scenario is the stadium itself is in need of new lighting. So just working on understanding what the budget is for new lighting for the stadium as part of the total master plan for Brady Street. When we jump to the north side of 36, then we're looking at a solution for how to place a new baseball field as well as provide that multi-sport turf. So this is kind of a nice solution. It gives us a baseball field, home plates down here in the lower left, center field's in the upper right. This would all be turf. We'd have a warning strip. So the warning strip from side to side all the way across could be turf. Our baselines currently as designed, I believe, are 315 or 320 feet with a 380-foot center field, which does fit nicely. What we have is dugouts each side, bullpen each side, announcer's booth, press box. This could be sized to have a concession and bathroom underneath. Zone for bleachers that wrap the backstop. And then up in the left field zone, we have the softball batting cages and then baseball batting cages. So providing a solution for both softball and baseball. You'll see some marks around the exterior, which would be our poles for lighting for baseball. And then adjacent to that is our multi-sport turf field. So again, sized for soccer, also holds striping for football so that we can use this for multiple sports. One of the things we want to look at is while we're providing turf at this location, could we get a price to turf either the infield, outfield, or both for softball, as well as provide some lighting for softball as well. So that's in the master plan pricing. The rest of the site, we are looking at potentially leaving some space for a building. We don't know what that building would be. This is a sizable footprint, but it could be a training facility, a standalone training facility such as what's behind North High School. It could be something that has storage and team rooms for Central that gets them out of the Brady Street Stadium. And then along here is just a inlet, so just a drop-off lane. So if there's an event and somebody needs dropped off, whether it's a student or somebody with a disability, there's a safe spot to drop them off. There are a couple of ADA parking stalls on that side of the street. We didn't want to put too many parking spaces around the back of the baseball field just because people like their windshields and want to keep them intact. So the other consideration is we'll have to look at the height of fence as it borders. I believe that's not Bridge. That's I can't remember what street that is, but we'll have to consider whether we need a taller fence or net there just to prevent any big sluggers from hitting any cars that are driving up and down the street. Did you want to address anything?
Yeah, I was looking for the street. I apologize. I'd like to first say that the input that Michelle and Jeremy and Kevin and Tammy have provided through this process has been really valuable. And one of the priorities has been, as we develop this master plan, to find a way to make Brady Street, and that's a district facility, and separate that from Central's facility so that on game nights, that if Davenport North or Davenport West are playing, that's their facility on that night. And with the current structure, Central's home locker rooms for outside sports are right now inside that facility. This master plan would provide the opportunity for there to be a Central facility and then a Davenport facility on the bottom, which would be a benefit, I think, to everyone. Yeah.
That also has us considering the use of the other ancillary buildings that surround Brady Street to make sure that those might help in resolving that need. So I believe that sort of covers the presentation of how we look at the turf field. So questions?
Director Beck.
Sorry. My first question is about the Brady Street facility. When you look at the south side where we have the floodplain, how far up does flooding typically go on that? What would be essentially a secondary field?
So the flood zone that's identified by survey versus where we typically see water are going to look a little bit different, but about the 50-yard line is about where historically we've seen water on a bigger event. It's not to say that it couldn't get worse,
right?
But if you think about where the current baseball field is, just draw a diagonal from the one corner of one baseline down to the other corner of the other, and that can take on water.
My concern was just to make sure that if we're moving the field event area, that is not, we're not creating another problem that they can't use their facilities.
And part of the orientation, that was the one exercise, the charlet. Did I say that correctly?
Charrette.
I tried. Part of that was taking those shapes and moving them, and this was a result of one of our last meetings, just keeping that in mind so that those are usable all spring.
Sorry. A second question was about sort of all of these in general. I noticed it's kind of hard to find where spectators might sit. Broken one. I got it. I'll just share with Kim. Oh, it's back on. Like for the tennis courts, I noticed, nothing's, not that we're renovating tennis courts or anything, but there's not really any spectator space. The same with, softball. I don't see, people might bring lawn chairs. And I know that not every event is a big capacity event either, but are we sort of making sure that there's a little bit of room around there for people to observe, maybe a few benches or something like that?
So the other events were discussed. What you see here is a nice concourse that would lead you in adjacent to the tennis courts. We didn't expand seating per se for tennis, but the consideration would be there's a big thought that a building here could be something that serves could serve softball, could serve tennis, could serve baseball by maybe having a little bit of concessions in it. Maybe it has team rooms for the teams that are competing at any of these. We know there's this, what they call the softball house up here, but maybe having a little bit nicer facility that serves the bathrooms and concession needs. Part of the idea of the alignment of this walkway was to kind of bring a kind of a more of a entry to that site. Our other thought is that we would hope to fence the entire area of the athletics. So that really is a complex then.
And then a follow-up to that, I know on the side street there, there's always a chance that, you can't always build a fence tall enough. Where I work at Black Hawk, some people complained about getting softballs in their windshields, and they just put up signs that said, "Park at your own risk." And I don't see anything wrong with that. People can choose to park on that street or not.
Yeah, that for certain can happen. The other thing to note is a lot of the parking that occurs on that street right now is district parking. So that likely will change as this gets built out.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Is the baseball field where the bus lot is right now? I mean, is that,
Correct.
so where's the bus lot going?
The consideration is the bus lot will move down to the Armory property that's at the east end of this road. And the buses will fit on that property.
Got it. Brady parking. Brady parking is awful. I have often had to park, probably not legally, across the street in those lots and then play Frogger going across the street. What are we doing to expand the parking? Because it is not safe.
So we did ask if there was any chance that we could close 36th, and the city said no, because our first goal was to see if we could vacate the street and unify the campus as a whole. We thought that would be the best shot at safety. With that in mind, we are trying to provide more parking on the stadium side of the street. So we're adding a lot of parking just below the existing baseball lot. We have not looked at any changes to the south parking lot of the stadium at this point. That seems to be striped out to maximize how much parking can fit there. As we begin to uncover what happens with the rest of the National Guard property, there is some additional parking that wraps around the National Guard building there. The district also owns all of the houses that are on the south side of 36. So we have continued opportunities to grow both parking and outdoor activity space that the district could use at their disposal.
Okay, and then give me a ballpark if we were going to add restrooms like to north and west. I mean, I don't think you can expect spectators to sit there and, oh, sorry, but we don't have a bathroom around here. What's a ballpark cost of?
I don't have it yet. We're hoping to have all that priced out within the
Okay.
next week.
Okay.
I have one quick follow-up question. The field there with the shot put, and I'm just asking, I'm sure you guys did this, but why wouldn't you turn that to go along with the road and then move all your parking down in there, and it would give you a lot of real estate for parking, and you wouldn't have to worry about so much about flooding. And then you're right along the road there, and it's easier to get to everything.
You potentially could. One thing that we have to be careful, this football field, I don't believe quite fit. There's a right-of-way storm drainage piece that runs through there, and I don't think a football field quite fits in here to full length. If we turn that sideways, we can move all of these around a little bit, and we could try to maximize some more parking, though. That certainly can be explored.
Director Barnes.
So my question is about drainage. Does the city of Davenport have any requirements that are going to require underwater or underground water storage, given all of the surface that we're adding?
Why, yes. And if we scroll back to the first two projects, north and west, each of these fields will have a drainage system under the entire field. So with turf fields, sports fields in general, we like to put a drainage system under that. That's a grid of piping. That piping system under the field, based on our initial calculations, should hold the storage for the stormwater that we need to be accounting for. When we look at Brady Street, it's a little bit different animal. We will provide drainage under the baseball field and the turf practice field. There's going to be a lot of capacity there, but we still have to have controlled flow to the south. So there will be a little bit of extra work that responds to that. Does that answer that question?
Director Poston.
Just a quick follow-up to that question, and there's no need for retention ponds or anything like that then?
We don't believe so at this time. There may be something that might have to respond to the bigger Brady Street site just in terms of master plan, but as far as the new development pieces, we believe there's enough underfield storage to cover without any open pond at the north side of the Brady Street site at west or at north.
And again, I have a concern too, just like Karen mentioned, as far as the parking. The natural turf field on the east side of the stadium, how necessary do you think that is?
I think it's definitely worth considering how we might alternately use that field. I think that's something we can take into consideration. I do, though, worry about the shot and the discus areas. Where they're at right now has been a point of worry for everyone involved since we had to put them over there. There might be some potential to use some of the property off to the east, but the further you get from the track, the harder that becomes for our coaches. So I think it's worthy of conversation.
What about off the southwest corner of Brady Street for the shot put?
The shot could go there. Back years ago, the shot was in the stadium area, and the discus was in that far southwest corner before that road went through. The problem is always finding a place, because we have the same coach that coaches shot and discus, finding an area where they can coach both in proximity so that they're providing instruction for practices more so than meets. A meet, that would be no problem at all, as long as there's good weather.
Yeah. Well, in my mind, that entire area to the east of the stadium, and then where all the houses are, to me, all of that should be put into parking, because there's just not enough parking for the facilities that we have there. You don't have anything on the north side of the road to speak of as far as parking, so it's going to have to come, to the south. And if there's spectators going to any of those three fields to the north, that would be easier access than all the way to the south of the stadium or west of the stadium. So I don't know. You hate to put too much under concrete, but it's kind of a hassle with people trying to, from a safety standpoint, crossing Brady Street to get to the stadium site.
Yeah, we will definitely explore some options. I think those are from both Director Klein Jerome and Director Pashan. I think those are very worthy considerations that we can keep toying around with our solutions.
Director Beck.
I don't know, one of these somewhere works. Following along with that, so if I'm not mistaken, we don't own all of those houses, right? There's one house we don't own.
One, which is
right there.
Right there.
So we could potentially still, even if we don't own that property, put some parking where the other houses are, right?
Yes.
Which I think would be a good solution, because that would expand the parking further that way, which would provide better access to the north side of the facility. But my other concern is, and this may be something that the city has to weigh in on, there's no sidewalk on 36th Street there on either side. And I've been worried about it going to events myself, but also the cross-country teams run and track teams run along that street back towards to get to like Eastern Avenue Park and Duck Creek Trail and stuff. It's not safe. And it bothers me every time I see kids coming back from those runs. And the same thing would happen if we added parking, right? Because people would then need to be able to walk from those areas. Is there any way to put sidewalk in or ask the city to put some sidewalk in? Because technically, I think it's the city's responsibility.
Yeah, so first and foremost, we did want to bound our north side of the property with sidewalk, so provide as much sidewalk opportunity as possible. On the south side, wherever we do development, we should consider adding sidewalk. The other thing that we talked about, and this is a conversation that'll have to happen with the city, is whether we can either provide some rollout stop signs for event crossing, or B, provide a signal crosswalk at any point to connect the north and south. That's a conversation that just hasn't materialized yet, but those would be considerations.
I guess I would add, going all the way to what will be the bus lot, which I know you guys park some buses down there now. A sidewalk along that block, I think, would add a lot to safety there, especially if we're thinking of adding parking and potentially people end up parking down there anyway.
Director Poston?
It's hard to see in this picture, but how much distance do we have between that last house and when we get to the motor pool? Is there, how much area do you think that is?
The motor pool, I believe, is the last house is right here, and the motor pool is literally the edge of the image here.
Cool.
You're seeing just the edge of one of the buildings right there in the bottom of the picture.
Is there, the other option for parking is, what's going to happen to the Armory building? Are we going to use it for something? Is it going to be tore down? Is that kind of in your plans or your thinking on this whole project?
Yeah, so that is one of the things that we're still working through, is what function these buildings would serve. But that's where the concept of some sort of crossing, whether it be temporary stop sign or signal crossing, came into play, because we do have a good-sized parking lot there. There is opportunity to cross, but also with the idea that a good amount of parking for events on the north side of the street are going to be on the south side. We just need to provide some protective measure to get back and forth across the street. The other thing is looking at some of the other functions that the ancillary buildings can serve, whether it's storage for the different high schools, sports teams or athletic departments, whether it's some other opportunities that serve the complex. We need to make sure that we have a safe ability to get from one side of the street to the other.
Director Beck?
Sorry, one last question. Up there by the softball field, I don't know if you can see it on that one. It looks like there's a walkway that goes towards those buildings with the green roof. So like right there. What is that? That corner is a shopping center, if I remember correctly.
If you look at the building that is, if you go from home plate immediately to the west, that is the softball house.
That's the
It was
softball
purchased
house.
a few years ago. So there is some parking in that area where John is moving the cursor right now.
Okay. But the
Um,
green building, the green roof is not ours, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Director Potts.
We're talking about parking, but do we have any data to say how many people show up for a baseball game? How many people show up for a softball game? Because I've gone to a couple of the baseball games, and there's plenty of seats in the bleachers. I mean, just I've gone to soccer games, and there's plenty of room. So, our my experience has been football game parking becomes a premium. Band spectacular. God help you, you're parking by stuffs in someplace else. Okay, but other than that, I I would hate to see us create parking for a crowd that never shows up. So I don't know if there's any way we could generate some just some idea.
We have gate reports from every event that we've had over the past X number of years. We could easily mine that data.
Director Poston.
Presentation's over.
I just have a question for the ADs, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything, but as a school district, it seems like participation in extracurricular activities keeps going down, and that whether it's sports or band or whatever. So as a school district, are we being foolish for spending this kind of money on these facilities if we don't have the participation down the road?
I think that, as they said in the baseball movie, if you build it, they will come. And I think, we have to provide something that people want to come to. And some of our facilities, could use a facelift and would encourage and entice some of the kids who are leaving our district, going to places where they see better facilities and opportunities in these other school districts. And I think we could keep more of our kids here. I think when we get to the high school level, we're losing more than what we'd like to see go to other places. And so my personal opinion, I'd say, no, I don't think we're foolish. And you've been around long enough as I have, and things go up and down. And so I think you build and hope and encourage and try and get more kids out for more things. That's what we should do.
I can speak to the money that we spent on the pool at Central High School and the effect that had on our programs. I'm sure most of you are aware, our girls swim team just finished third in the state behind two perennial powerhouses that normally we would have no chance of being near. And I fully believe that building that phenomenal facility was a big part in that. And I think, to reiterate what Michelle said, I think that this is the step in the right direction to continuing that foundation of putting forth the effort to expand in athletics. I mean, it's not necessarily fair or right, but when people are looking at districts, they probably should focus a little more on the academic side, but a lot of families are looking at athletics, and one of the first things they look at athletics is the facilities. So I think it is a huge positive investment to make these changes.
Well, thank you. That was the answer I was looking for. So I appreciate it.
All right, I have a couple questions. First, I think if we're gonna do this stuff, which I mean we've already said we're gonna do it, I think we need to incorporate the concession stands in there because we're already tearing up the ground, and it would be stupid not to. So I don't know why that wasn't brought to us before when we were doing this. And then my other question is as well, since the junior highs will potentially be using these facilities, are we going to be looking at scoreboards, lighting? Because those are things that should be done when we're doing this, because obviously you need to trench in all the power and everything like that. And I know we had someone speak at an open forum, one of the junior high coaches, and I mean, it would help us utilize our facilities a lot more, and then scheduling times and things like that. So, I mean, obviously that's going to add to the cost. I understand that. But like at the Brady complex, I mean, we definitely need new lights at the football stadium. That no doubt about that. And I know Musco has a lot better product than they did when those lights were purchased, and it'd be a lot cheaper. And I would imagine when we were doing it, we should get one heck of a discount from them for purchasing that much lighting from them. Uh, so in my mind, I would see you putting together some numbers for us for that, because it's like I say, we do so many things backwards that I wish some of you guys worked in construction and you understand how things work, because once it's tore up, you might as well just go and do it. My other question is, on this complex right here, you have the way the baseball field is right now. Is that going to put sun in the batter's eyes? Does it need to be flipped? Okay. And my other question on it is, I don't never remember anyone mentioning anything about turfing the baseball fields, or the baseball field and the softball field. I think that's a stupid idea. If you go watch a baseball game at Brady Street, or not Brady Street, but the Betplex, the grounders roll for days. But I like grass fields. But John, you had mentioned that the other high schools would be able to utilize this. So does that mean North and West are going to have their home games out there? And because essentially is what we've always done, Brady Street is central. 100%, everybody knows it. So when we do this, it's going to look like we are giving turf fields to Central, but not the other schools, because obviously North's going to play their games at North, and West has that awesome complex out there. Unless we're going to look at turf and some of that to. I do understand having the athletic complex. I think that's a huge thing. It's awesome. It'll attract a lot of people, but I just want to make sure that we're spreading the wealth a lot. I mean, we put $28 million in a pool there, for that stuff. And I do get that. And I want to make sure we're spreading the wealth.
Absolutely. And that's been a part of the conversations that have been held with the ADs, with the planning team, making sure that each building's getting what they feel that they need, while really building what would be a district complex on the south end of that picture. I think this also potentially could open up the possibility to some partnerships down the road. I think there's some things that, we could look at possibly, developing or broaching to make this a facility that really our whole district and community is proud of.
I can go back to a couple of your other comments. So each of the turf fields, north and west, those budgets included lights, fencing, scoreboards. We are in our pricing exercise, pricing out the concessions, restrooms, the any of the other amenities to make sure that we understand how much we can afford, and if we want to stretch further and do more, we can. At the Brady Street complex, the baseball field would be lit, the softball field would have lighting, and then those lighting masts provide the opportunity to provide lighting backwards onto the practice field should it be used for any other activity. The conversation about turf on the baseball field versus grass, the initial conversation was that the preference would be towards turf. The type of turf can vary wildly, so the turf that gets selected for whether it's a football field, soccer field, or baseball field is based on what you want the action of play to be like. So For a soccer field, for example, do you want the ball to bounce or roll a certain way? Do you want it to feel a certain way underfoot? The same goes for turf that might go into a baseball field. None of this is set in stone yet. This is just the reflection of what those initial conversations have been. As well, this is the opportunity to provide anything underground that we need to put in now so that we can handle the long-term growth of the master plan without having to tear back up and tear out things that we're spending good money on now. So that is part of that consideration.
My other question on those concession stands, what sizes were you thinking on that? Did you like have a size? I mean, obviously you got it there, but is it going to be big enough for, I know you said like team rooms, but like locker rooms? Because like at North, the kids are going to have to walk all the way from the back around the gym to come up to the soccer field, just like the kids playing soccer.
Yeah, so in general, the footprint of those buildings that you saw was something adequate to have a concession stand, not a huge concession stand, just a small concession stand. Maybe it's a 20 by 20 space or something like that. Male and female restrooms, about 3 fixtures each, and then the ancillary space would be team rooms and storage. Those buildings are pretty sizable. When we look at this building on this particular plan, the brown rectangle square is huge. It's a 75 by 120 foot building. That's not to say we would build something that big. It's just to show how sizable of a facility you could put there should you need it.
Okay, that's why I was wondering. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe we need to have concession stands in there. I mean, that's how the boosters make money to help out with those programs, because obviously the district can't pay for everything. And it'd be a beneficial for us to do that because it helps them out.
So I was just going to comment on that baseball field. We had talked about that press box area, actually making that a concession and restroom area, seeing as that main building was going to be phased in later. So when John had talked about that press box area, the one that he's circled right now, we had talked about trying to price out having concessions and bathrooms there, not a team room, but concessions and bathrooms there, and then having that other building for later. And then to your comment about being turf fields, I'm a former soccer player, been around baseball my whole life. Yes, everyone would rather play on grass for both, but cost efficiency and everything too. Right now, we are to the point where we're having to have our baseball coaches and their programs help purchase materials to keep up with the dirt and everything on the grass fields. And so, yes, right now, yes, it'll be a big expense, but the district will actually be saving a lot of money by putting in turf, by not having to purchase all that dirt, by not having to pay operations departments to maintain the fields, which they spend a lot of time right now, working on the dirt, chalking the field every game, so they're taken away from all those other buildings because they got to come chalk our fields twice a day if we have a freshman game in the morning and then a varsity game at night. So in the end, if you talk to any baseball coach or any soccer coach, they probably do like playing on grass better, but they also see the benefits of not having to work the fields themselves either, because right now our baseball coaches are doing a lot themselves because our operations departments are spread so thin with so many buildings to take care of. So that's another advantage to spending a little bit extra on that turf.
Tricking me. I think the other part of this is talked a little bit about partnerships. This is an opportunity for us to partner with our booster clubs too, to make some of these things a part of their vision moving forward too. I just think that each of these sites is going to present its own needs, oddities, I guess, and it's just a chance to work together and further build that sense of community and getting something established for our kids.
Appreciate it. I guess the only thing I would ask is to look at the other schools turfing their baseball fields too. I mean, we got to start being fair on this stuff and not one-sided all the time. And I'm not saying anything by that, but it's very apparent Um, and I do think we do need more parking, 100%. Any Friday night you drive by, it's crazy. But maybe doing some of these things for the junior highs too will help out. And I think it'd be cool to give them nice turf fields to play on. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I agree. I think if you build it, they'll come. And when they start seeing our weight rooms and all the things that we're offering, next thing we got to get an awesome wrestling complex because our competitors to the north just did that. I'm just saying. So, anyone have anything else on this? Perfect. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a quick 5-minute break before we go on to this next thing. All right, we're back. We will move on to subject 1.04, ISPASP and fast data. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. We have a star-studded team here with us today, but I do want to highlight one member, Ms. Hansel. I want to thank you for stepping up in a time of need. We're doing a math textbook adoption, and she's currently the assistant principal at Central. And just a quick story. We were down at the Adler, and she had earbuds in and a Zoom and getting kids where they were supposed to be in a math textbook adoption meeting. And I think it's just a really good example of the kind of people we have sitting at this table with us, willing to do whatever it takes. So really appreciate that. I'll turn it over to Diane.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you our ISASP and FAST data. And one of the things that have really resonated with me as we have gone through this slide deck multiple times and preparing for tonight is just the strong message that you're going to see about the actions that are happening because of the data. That number one, we are becoming and are a data-driven district, which I think, again, through that lens is really powerful. So I just want you to listen for that as we go through our presentation. A second piece is the collaborative efforts that are happening. So you can see this strong team, as TJ mentioned. This represents about half of our team, but everyone is in it. Everyone is incredibly strong leaders, being able to work with teachers to make the right decisions for students. So that's another piece of this collaboration. And then this opportunity of breaking down silos. So we have in many of our implementation teams, special education and general education at the table at the same time, making decisions together. So that's just a third highlight that I want to bring to the forefront as we go through our data presentation today. I think that the interconnectedness piece of everything that you're going to hear about the actions and the response to our data is really highlighted in those areas that I just shared. So yes, we'll go ahead and start with introductions, and if we can maybe begin with Melissa down at the end, and then we'll get going.
Melissa Trimble, Curriculum Specialist for Science.
Alyssa Hansel, on loan from Central, the Interim Math Specialist.
Kim Woods, ELA Curriculum Specialist, Secondary, so 6 through 12.
Bonnie Acey, Program Director of Curriculum, Pre-K-12.
Jennifer Saxon. I am ELA specialist for preschool through 5th grade.
Krista Kohlberg. I'm a special ed specialist with literacy being my focus area.
Okay, thank you. And just the IASB questions that we'll highlight today are questions number 2, 3, and 5. And you'll see through the presentation today that it's going to go in this sequence, that we're going to define the assessment measures and how the data is used. Then we're going to go into the growing excellence goal, which is our current reality, and highlight ELA, math, and science. And then again, focusing on those action steps that are in place so we can move the needle in our growing excellence goals and our student outcome data. Just a reminder of our continuous improvement process that we have in front of us at all times. And the ISASP, again, is one of the data points that we'll be highlighting. And just a reminder that this, as a DSAT, we're determining that the ISASP data is used to determine areas of focus in our district, building and CTTs. We are using ISASP data at the building and district level to inform our growing excellence. So when we do a data dive and a data review when ISASP is released, but we also do it when we're developing our goals for our growing excellence plans at the district level and building level. It has informed our course sequencing and what we need to be doing with courses and course alignment, as well as domain level data that we can use at the collaborative teacher teams, and knowing what students are doing well and what areas they need to work on. We also use ISASP for identification of gifted and talented students, as well as it is a general determination of the effectiveness of our core. And just a reminder that ISASP is one of the big data points that gives us our Iowa School Performance Profile designation. So you can see on the elementary middle school that ISASP alone through participation, proficiency, and growth equals 58%. So 58% of our Iowa School Performance Profile score is based on ISASP. And then at the high school level, it comes up to 49%. Okay. And as we go into ISASP, we have Kim, who is going to share the ELA. She'll again identify and define those assessment measures, what our current reality is with ISASP related to ELA, and then those action steps that we are using through our continuous improvement process. So Kim.
All right, so we're going to first take a look at the ELA ISASP goal, which is our growing excellence. So by June of 2025, the goal is to have a minimum of 80% proficiency or advanced scores on the ISASP in reading and math, or to demonstrate a minimum of 8% increase in the median student growth percentile for both reading and math. As a reminder, there's no data for 2021 school year, obviously because we weren't in session. So as we look at these slides, you're going to see a lot of these throughout the rest of the evening. And I just kind of want to explain what this chart is telling us. So if you look at the very top, there's a key. So everything in yellow is not yet proficient. If you're looking at the lighter blue, that's proficient level. And then if you're looking at the darker blue, this is the advanced. The goal is that we're going to focus on the green, which is adding the proficient and the advanced together to get an actual percentage. So if you're looking at grade number 3, you are seeing from 2020 to 2023, we went from 51% to 48%. As you look at 4th grade, you'll notice that we went from 59% to 57%. And then if you think about the cohort, as you're looking at grade 3 to 4, you'll notice that there was an increase from 51% to 57%. So we're going to be really focusing on that green because that's telling us the proficient and the advanced levels together. So that's our focus for the evening. As we take a look at grades 5 and 6, so 2022, we were at 48%. For 23, we went to 46. As we take a look at grade 6, we were at 55%. Then we went to 61%. Keeping in mind that's the proficient and the advanced is the green. That's what we're talking about. And then as you think about the 4th to 5th cohort, we decrease from 59% to 46%. And then the 5th to 6th cohort, we increase from 48% to 61%. And then we take a look at grade 7 and grade 8. So for 2022, we were at 52%, and then we went to 55%. For 8th, we were at 55%, and then we went to 53%. If we think about the cohorts from 6th to 7th, we stayed the same at 55%. When we look at 7th to 8th, we increase from 52% to 53%. And then we take a look at grades 9 and 10. So for 2022, we were at 49%, and then for 23, we went to 48. And then for 10th, we were at 55% for 22, and then for 23, we went down to 47%. And as we look and think about the cohorts, from 8th to 9th, we decreased because we went from 55% to 47. And then from 9th to 10th, the cohort, we also decreased from 49% to 47%. And then last, we look at grade 11. So for 22, we were at 55%, and then we went to 47%. And if we take a look at the cohort from 10th to 11th, we decreased from 55% to 47%. And so these are the type of charts that you're going to see for the rest of the evening. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jen.
All right, so we're going to take a look at the Fast Bridge assessments, which is starting at our lower elementary, so kindergarten, and then they go up through 8th grade. And these Fast Bridge assessments are universal screeners that we take 3 times a year. We take them in both ELA and in math. You can see a list of the subtests that are given for ELA, and when we get to math, takes the A math test in grades 1 through 8 as well. So the purpose of this data is to help us to understand our core instructional impacts and then needs for intervention throughout the district. We do have a specific growing excellence goal that's tied to FAST, and it states that all 3rd grade students will be at 80% or above by June of 2024. And you can see then the past several years, you can see what the goal was and how that had increased over the time, as well as then our actual percentages for 3rd grade. So we break our FAST bridge into healthy indicators, and these healthy indicators are what we use to help identify the overall health of our MTSS system. There are 6 different indicators that are used, and we use these with our leadership teams to help dive through and analyze the data during our leadership academies after those benchmarking periods. So our first indicator is just directly tied to the percentage of students that are screened. Indicator 1 says that we will have 95% of our students screened, and you can see then fall, winter, spring from last year, and then of course this year we currently only have fall that's reported. Our next indicator is tied to progress monitoring. This indicator specifies that 90% of our students who are below benchmark will be progress monitored at least 80% of the weeks. And you can see on the bottom we have the overall percentages from fall to winter over the past 3 years, obviously with this year not being reported yet for fall to winter of this school year. The top 2 graphics would show the weekly progress monitoring percentages. And you can see from fall to winter in 2021 to 2022, we had some discrepancies that we worked with our leadership teams to set some goals on. And then we can see that our weekly percentages for fall to winter last school year had remained consistent. The 2 drop downs are those testing periods where they're not expected to test and or winter break. This third healthy indicator is one that we do focus on a lot. This is 80% of students screened are at or above benchmark. This is also the one that's directly tied to that growing excellence goal for 3rd grade. This report here is obviously our K through 6 students. And you can see our score for the fall for students in grades K through 6 for healthy indicator number 3. And we can see then below that we have the previous 3 years data as well. And our healthy indicator 4 is tied to students who scored at or above benchmark and then maintain that status of being at or above benchmark from screening periods. So this is showing us the year-long from fall to spring over the past 3 years. And we do have a little work to do here. We have students, our goal is to be 95%. We're not quite there for having our students to maintain their status. Healthy indicator 5 is directly related to just providing intervention to students who are below benchmark. So our goal is to have 95% of our students who are below benchmark or labeled as that persistently at risk status to be scheduled in an intervention. And you can see that that's something that we have consistently been able to do. And our final healthy indicator is healthy indicator 6. The goal is for 65% of students who scored below benchmark to improve to at or above benchmark in the ending window. So you can see then over the past 3 years, from fall to spring, we are far away from this goal, so that importance of improving our overall core to meet the needs of our students is step one, as well as then continuing to provide those interventions to students who are below benchmark.
So what is the current state, our current district state? This chart shows the percentage of students who were proficient in the fall screening over the last 4 years. You can see on the horizontal axis the percentage of proficient, that's the grade levels, and the horizontal is the percentage of proficient. On the vertical axis is the percentage of proficient. I apologize. The green line on the top indicates the 80% proficiency. This helps us look at the trends in student performance over the past 4 years. We can see our scores are starting to trend back upward after back to the pre-pandemic state in most of our grade levels. And then this graphic is the same information, but in a little bit easier way to read it. This is in terms of cohort data. So cohort meaning looking at the same group of kids across multiple years. If we examine one cohort over multiple years, if you look at the purple, color coding in purple, cohort showed 58% proficiency in kindergarten, and they dropped in first grade and had a small gain in second. This fall, they went over their pre-pandemic score and scored a 59% proficient. We believe one trend that we noted is a drop in proficiency from kindergarten to first grade. We believe this is due to the change between teaching skills in isolation to applying those skills. A primary focus of our ELA adoption was looking for increased opportunities of application for our kindergarten students. Our field test program using Amplify CKLA is designed to have students learning sounds of letters that immediately apply those and then immediately apply those sounds in blending to read simple 2 and 3 letter words.
So that was an overview of our ISASP and FAST ELA data, and I wanted to take just a moment to talk about all of the continuous improvement work that we've been doing within that ELA focus. So for starters, providing that letters professional development and the science of reading to all of our teachers. We have 556 teachers, K-6, who have completed letters PD this year. That totals 55 hours of PD with last year and this year alone with our letters training. In addition, we're engaging in a field test of a structured literacy curriculum, which is aligned to the science of reading at elementary. For preschool, that's creative curriculum. And then for K-5, that's our Amplify CKLA that Krista was referencing. We also are implementing a standards-aligned curriculum through field testing, again at the secondary level, and that is with our HMH Intellit for grades 6 through 10. So we know that there are still additional next steps that we want to work on to improve student learning. Number one is in that area of professional development, instruction and engagement. Recently, we've learned that the state of Iowa Department of Ed is aligning their practices in support of science of reading with letters professional development. And it's really exciting to know that we have already got that in place and started, and we'll continue with that great learning for our teachers. We want to ensure that that rigor is aligned to grade level standards, and we will need to do some reprioritizing of work when we onboard this new curriculum, but we are excited to be able to put a resource in front of our students that is rigorous and incorporates the necessary practices for our students that we know they need and deserve. We will continue professional development around increasing that teacher confidence and instructional delivery. We know that it's more than just a curriculum, so we have to match that curriculum with instructional delivery and embedding those opportunities for engagement and for students to respond. And finally, we will be coming back to you in February with a proposal to adopt a new K-10 ELA curricular resource.
And now we will move on to math. Following the same process. So if we look at the FAST A math scores, as a reminder, Jen told us that it is our universal screening tool used to assess our student 3 times a year. A math is taken in grades 1 through 8. And this chart looks familiar because you just saw it with the A reading, but now we're looking at math of the percent of students who were proficient on the fall screening benchmark over the last 4 years. Looking at the purple cohort, showing that 57% of second graders in the 2021 school year, and see that they have a jump in third grade to 62% in the 21-22 school year, and then ultimately fall to 51% in the fifth grade for this school year. And then there is our growing excellence goal combined with the reading goal. So Kimmy did a nice job reading that. And you can see that in purple would be that minimum 80% of the proficiency in advance, the overall proficiency scores over the course of these 3 years. And then what we've actually grown for math in that orange yellowy color. And now we'll look at some grade level data from the Math ISASP, reminding you that the blues are the overall proficiency, the yellow is the not yet, and then the green is what we just added in to do that math for you. In grades 3 and 4, proficient and advanced decreased as follows. Third to fourth cohort from the 58% to 57%. Proficient and advanced increased as follows. Third grade advanced from 11% in the 22 school year to 12% in 23, and fourth grade 53% in the 22 school year to 57% in 23. Moving on to fifth and sixth grade, proficient and advanced increased as follows. Fifth grade 40% to 47%, sixth grade 51% to 52%. And then cohort-wise, the fifth grade to the sixth grade cohort from 40% to 52%. And now seventh and eighth grade. Proficient and advanced decreased as follow, looking at cohorts from 7th to 8th from 43% to 41%. And that proficient and advanced increased in 7th grade from 43%, that 22 year, to 45%, 23 year. And then we get 9th and 10th grade. Proficient and advanced decreased as follows. 9th grade, 37%, that 22 school year, to 34%. And then looking at cohort from 9th to 10th, it was from 37% to 41%. And then looking at the 10th grade, 40% increase to 41%. And we'll round it out to 11th grade. Proficient Advanced increased from the 22 school year from 36% to 41%. And I'll let Bonnie summarize.
So, we just want to start with some of those great things that have already happened with math. We have our new pre-K 8 curriculum that we are very excited about that's being implemented right now. Also, within our MTSS tiers of instruction for math, we're able to utilize that adaptive Tier 2 product that helps to focus on individual progress based on gaps and holes for all of our K-8 students. Very excited that we have been able to increase the math instructional time at the middle school level with that double block that allows for core in Tier 2 to happen for all students every day with math. We have that continued CTT time for collaboration and planning, which is especially important with a new curriculum. And just the ongoing PD has been so exciting. It's happening at the building level. Every building is assigned an HMH coach that comes in and supports with them on their own specific learning and professional development. So that's been huge. We're continuing some next steps and focus around really helping to fine-tune those CTTs to support early intervention for math using the data we have to help support the students that need it. We've heard from teachers. They're really asking us to continue to help find creative ways to protect teacher time during their CTT and their prep so that they can plan lessons and learn the new material. We know that's important all the time, but especially when we have new curriculum. We're working to find solutions at our secondary level. We know that they encounter some scheduling barriers that don't allow for that adequate time for teachers to collaborate just due to the structure of the schedule in their day, that we need to give them that good collaborative CTT time and find ways to do that. And we'll continue to look for an exploration around what could some potential high school screeners be with that MTSS work and collaboration that we're doing.
To round out the evening, we'll talk a little bit about the science data. It's going to look a lot different than what we have for ELA and math. First, because science is not included in the Growing Excellence Plan specifically. And also there is no Science FAST, there's only Science ISASP. Further, Science ISASP is only in 3 grade levels, 5th, 8th, and 10th. So it's going to be really quick and only 1 slide of data. And while you're all panicking about, oh my gosh, they've thrown so many numbers at us, we are going to hand out a data sheet for you in just a minute and go through that a little bit more as well. So we're going to review our current reality and then talk about some action steps. As you can see on the information from the Science ISASP, same sort of idea. Our 5th graders did show an increase in proficient and advanced students. We went from 46% up to 49%. Our 8th grade students maintained their percent proficiency and advanced status at 51%. And our 10th grade students showed a decrease from 40% down to 30%.
And so just some great work around science. We want to celebrate the restructuring sequence of our courses for high school to include physical science in grades 9 and 10. The why behind that with working with our teachers is previously physical science courses were not completed by students before they took the ISASP as a 10th grader. So this will ensure that happens. 10th grade is the final year for science testing with ISASP. And so prior to now, students only had earth and life science before taking ISASP. However, now with the restructure of the course sequence, they will have earth, life, and physical science prior to taking ISASP, so helping them be more prepared for the assessment. Also, our newly adopted curriculum resources for high school courses are aligned to the NGSS, which is our next generation science standards, and will support the new sequence of our courses. We'll continue to provide that professional development to teachers with the new curriculum, as well as best practices to increase engagement within our science instruction.
So now at last, we have given you links to all of the data on this slide, but we did have a chance to print out these as well for you. And I know you just saw a lot of it. This is all consolidated now for you. And once you get those in front of you, your top sheet should be math, and I believe the second sheet is ELA, and the final sheet is science. Again, a reminder, science is tinier because we only do 3 of the grade levels. Everybody always asks. Where's the rest? Let's see, these tables, we can look at all 3 types of data actually. So if you'll bear with me for just a minute, I'll get you oriented here. The first type of data that we look at is longitudinal data. That's the one that goes year to year to year to year. If you pick any of those small little data tables on the page and you look at the line for all students, you'll be able to see successively what their scores were in 1819. 1920 is of course going to say no data because we did not test that year. 2021, 2022, and then 2023. So you can go straight across for those all students, and that's going to give you your longitudinal data. The second type of data that we look at is cohort data, and those are going to be your color-coded columns. So if you look on and find the goldenrod column for the 2021 test for our 3rd graders, if you go over one data table, then those are your 4th graders in 21-22, and they will be your 5th graders in 22-23. We made it extra easy for you, and we used that same color coding process on all 3 sheets so that you can tell the kids and how they're moving through their years. Finally, we have that subgroup data on there for you, and those are the rows beneath all of the all students line. So you can see how our different student groups did both longitudinally and cohort-wise using the other types of formats. So it really is kind of all the data that you could need in that one piece. As we looked at this, in a couple of our different district groups, including DSAT and Curriculum Council, collaborative teacher teams, principal meetings, and with cabinet, we did notice some themes that emerged through all of the data. For all content areas and across all grades, our highest performing student groups continue to be our white students and our Hispanic Latino students. And again, across all content areas and grade levels, our lowest performing student groups continue to be the Black African American students, as well as the students with IEPs. Finally, I just wanted to comment very quickly on just how we communicate this data to all of our stakeholders. We do presentations like this to the school board. The principals in all of the buildings, as well as we at the district level, receive emails from Pearson guiding us with this data, as well as how to share it forward. We do process this data on ISASP with our DSAT curriculum principal teams, as I mentioned. And then where the rubber meets the road is when those collaborative teacher teams meet, they use this data to really dig into even the domains of all the questions that are posed to make sure that their instruction is aligning with what the goals are to be able to perform on the assessment. We also share this directly with families through our campus portal. I'm pleased to say that as soon as the embargo was lifted, Davenport District was the first one to get their data out to their parents. And we were able to do that, as well as share an access guide on how to read the forms and the data along with the individual student claim codes. It was a very seamless process that was able to be done through our Infinite Campus system. And then conferences always are a great time to be able to engage with these conversations about data with teachers as the need arises. Looking forward to this coming year, the state testing window is going to be, again, mid-March through early May. Our anticipated testing dates within the district are April 15th through the 26th, and we're going to determine those exact dates of what test happens on what day before winter break this year. And as you noticed, kind of another trend, the high school scores did drop on a lot of our different grade levels in the different subject areas. So we're working on some high school incentives to hopefully be able to increase their their scores, and we're excited to see how the incentives that we're going to propose, we're working with all the buildings, and we're excited to see how they manifest themselves into some better scores for our high school students.
Okay, so that wraps up the data review and provides an overview of where we are with ISASP and VAST data. And I just wanted to highlight, excuse me again, highlight our focus on the core as we have been going through this data and being able to really look at those high quality instructional materials as well as the instruction itself that matches. So with that, that wraps up our presentation for the data.
Director Beck.
Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions, really. So when you guys talk about progress monitoring, I think that was in one of our first data tables. How is that defined? What exactly, for an average person, what does progress monitoring mean?
So progress monitoring would be, we have our universal screeners that happen 3 times a year. And then those students that are below, we have to give them weekly assessment measures to check their progress on that weekly basis. So that's what that really means, is they're getting a weekly assessment measure that's directly tied to what their deficit skills might be, and or that's intended to show that growth in the intervention that students are having, and or if they're not making growth, it gives you that opportunity to analyze that data at a sooner point than the next benchmarking period.
Okay, so it's like a mini assessment. Then within that, I noticed when we're looking for that, what was it, healthy indicator 3 or something, I think, on progress monitoring? 2, sorry. The increase in consistency was awesome, but if you look at like the overall number, if we don't exclude the weeks that we're not doing progress monitoring by design, we're never going to reach that benchmark. So why can't we just exclude those weeks? It's like cut those blocks out of the table.
That sounds great.
Well,
So
I mean, it makes sense.
It does make sense. I agree with you. And one of the things that's important from the state's perspective, that's why they set the goal at 80% of the weeks, because they're giving you the leeway to say those are the weeks that you have off. So really then it would be 100% of the weeks that you have students available from their standpoint. Unfortunately, it's not a goal that we set. It's just a goal that we're asked to monitor by.
I don't trust their math, but anyway.
But it is very difficult, and the difference happens in this. When you look at like percentages for weekly, you could have students that are getting monitored that week, so that increases that percentage, but the overall comes out of all of those students. So if you don't have it, and then you don't have it, and you don't have it, that really changes that percentage.
Okay.
But it could be varying by week, which is why then you usually end up with that lower percentage for the overall, because not every single child was the same for those weeks. They just managed to get 90% of them monitored that week.
Okay, that makes a little bit more
So
sense.
that changes that percentage a little bit.
I still think they should let you drop the weeks that is our holidays. But
And we have asked, and we have not been the only district that have
I'm
asked.
sure,
I think it's
yeah.
been a consistent question for the last several
it's
years.
kind of like that other assessment, the conditions for learn.
Yes.
Yes, that doesn't, yeah. Anyway, my final question was, when you talk about a minimum of 8% median growth, what exactly does that mean? Because those numbers are super, it's like ELA or science, yeah. So demonstrate a minimum of 8% increase in the median student growth percentile. So I'm seeing a 42% here. Does that mean 42% of the students who grew at least 8%, or what? What does that mean?
So we had several pieces of input when we wrote this goal from buildings. We had AEA, review the goal itself too. And that minimum, that proficiency, if we weren't at the 80% proficiency proficiency in advanced scores, we wanted to be able to find a way that there would be the growth that could occur. So that minimum, if a building was at 46%, what is that 8%? So it's all individualized based on what the building is. So it allows the building to write their goal around that median student growth,
Okay.
the
But
average growth.
I guess, so what does the 42% like for the district for 21, 22 mean? Like, if that's all of our buildings?
For the district, yes, that
So
is. Mhm.
a
And then
building that did meet that minimum 8% increase would be in that 42%, and a building that did not would be in the other 48%?
it wouldn't, no.
Okay.
No. So the ELA growth, 42%, is indicating, we'll even take the 23-24 ELA growth, 41% of the students have shown growth.
Of at least 8%.
Across the district. 40
Of the 8%.
of the 8%. No.
No,
No,
of
it's
the of the students who
All
didn't.
students.
All students, not just the ones who weren't advanced.
Yeah. The 8% is what we as a district added, just again, so that buildings could meet a goal based on growth as opposed to all students hitting that 80% proficiency.
Okay.
Does that help?
More
Yeah.
goal.
It's a way, again, if we're at 41% and you have to jump to 80, that's a pretty audacious goal. It's not, that's going to be over time. Now we will get there, but may not be in a year. So if we're not, if a building is writing a goal and they're not at that close to that 80%, they can go with that 8% increase of students showing growth over time. So it's a more individualized way that buildings can address a specific goal related to ISASP that's more attainable, was the intent behind that. And I think that we can work on the wording of that.
Director Kleindrum.
One of your early slides said we use this information to identify gifted and talented, and this is a big issue for me. This isn't the only thing we're doing to identify them, right? If you are like artistically, musically gifted and talented, and your scores aren't good, this is not any longer just the basis. I see you.
100%.
Because it used to be this was it, and that was wrong. Okay.
So just to clarify, so we do have more than just ISAS that identifies. Like we use our COGAT assessment that we've used for years, in addition to other assessment measures, teacher recommendation. We also have a student portfolio process, which is really exciting for those students who might not test well, like the ones you're talking about, and making sure that we're serving in those domains as well, right? So besides just ELA and math, we have artistic, we have leadership, and so yes. Absolutely.
Good to hear.
Thank you.
Years and years ago, we did letters to the primary grades, and then we dropped it. And then we went to 95%, and that was going to do it for us. That was going to bring us up. And now we seem to have dropped it, and now we're back to letters. It's frustrating to see these scores when we have put lots of money into these programs and things, and we're not really seeing it. Now we've dumped a whole lot of money into curriculum. I'm truly hoping that we are going to see some growth, because that's not what we're really seeing here. I do follow the cohort groups more than just from year to year, because I like to see the same kids. And there is some, we just keep saying, oh, this is it, and it's just not showing up.
Yeah. And I certainly hear your frustration and probably frustration from others too regarding the history of things that have been done and tried. I would say a huge difference or a piece that we know now is implementation science and the coaching that goes behind it. And so when you have a curriculum resource, how are we supporting so that implementation is occurring? And that is a big piece to it. The other part is when in the past, I wasn't here with letters in when it was implemented earlier, but I know that the learning was there, but then the application piece has to come along with it. And so Letters has even revamped and updated so they have that bridge to practice. So you learn and then you do. You learn and then you do, which is really critical. And what we're hearing, not only from and what we're seeing from our field test, but also as we network, we've networked with UEN districts, other districts in our area that are using Amplify. But the pairing of Amplify and Letters goes hand in hand beautifully. So again, those are big differences between what was done in the past and what we're seeing and doing today.
And then my last thing, what are we doing for these IEP students? Just more of the same, or there's got to be something different, obviously. What is it that we're doing for them?
One of the pieces when I introduced our presentation this evening was the collaboration between special education and general education and our MTSS framework, knowing that we have to have a really solid core for all students, including our students with IEPs. There is a major emphasis on staying at grade level standards. So how being able to make sure that students with IEPs are at grade level standards and then building those skills set behind the skill deficits that are needed behind in Tier 2 and Tier 3, including their SDI minutes that they would need. So it's really making sure that we have a robust schedule and opportunity for students to have access to Tier 1 and Tier 2 and Tier 3. And then Krista?
And just Jen and I have been working very, very closely with each other on the implementation, the field test buildings for Amplify. And we're being proactive in how we are going to be rolling this out to all staff to better hit those populations of students with IEPs for all teachers, not just our special ed teachers, for general ed teachers first, because we know that our kids are all general ed. So I think that's a huge difference, is that we're a team.
And the other layer that I would add, and Courtney and I were just, so jump in here, Courtney, anytime, but we've also been very collaborative in our vision of what this would look like. And so how might we be able to develop student profiles and then be really clear about the additional resources beyond what we currently have. So then if I'm a teacher, a special education teacher, and I have this range of students in my classroom, I don't get to just go pick anything, but here's the profile of the learner that I have right in front of me. And then here are the resources and the instructional moves that will support the profile of that student. So we're going to get really specific, and I am so excited about that collaborative partnership, because then it becomes this entire continuum and it's not something separate. It really digs down to what the student needs, and then being able to identify specifically whether you're a student with an IEP or not, how it matches with the profile. So more to come on that, and just early in the conversations, but you are correct. We need to make sure that we're specific about what the services are for students with IEPs.
Director Barnes.
Thank you for all the data and assessment. How does this data get shared with individual teachers at the grade level? That's my first question. And my second question is, how does this information, especially when we see a dip from grade to grade, how is it incorporated into teacher instructor assessment and evaluation of the teacher? And then the final thing, that the CTTs, I know you said that you share it with the CTTs, but does that mean that it's shared with the individual teachers in each one of these levels as well? So a couple of questions there.
battling a little bit of a cold, so I'm going to try. So the grade level, like how is it shared at the grade level? It breaks it down, yes, by each individual teacher. Melissa commented a little bit about Pearson. That's the data system with ISASP. So we're able to do that. Same with our FastBridge assessments. Every teacher can look at their individual class, their individual student, all within each of those systems. Yeah, thanks.
And an additional example for ISASP is it does give us domain data. And as a collaborative teacher team, if we're meeting, we can look specifically at the grade level, find out what the domain was that the students were struggling with the most in our grade level, as well as our classroom, my classroom. So then I can double down on that domain, specifically in ELA, math or science, to be able to address that at the core level as additional time for learning for students. Okay.
So just a follow up. So you used the first person singular as if you were a teacher looking at their individual scores and or finding out how students did. How is this? Is the principal speaking with teachers when there is a dip? Is this a part of evaluation and assessment, or is this strictly something that I'm going to go in, I'm going to see how I'm doing, how my students are doing, and then I'm going to self-correct? Because it does seem like there's some patterns here of some ups and downs, which I think would systematically need to be addressed as part of assessment and evaluation. And maybe connected to that, are there any patterns related to teacher turnover at particular grade levels where we're seeing dips?
I'll speak with two hats on as a building administrator. We have you saw the Growing Excellence goal. That was math and reading up there of the 80%, 8% minimum. And then every building has their Growing Excellence plan. And within that, we have the autonomy to pick our goals, but most of us pick an ISASP goal. So speaking for Central, we have an academic goal and we're monitoring that data. And, for example, at Central, we're having a numeracy goal and a literacy goal and doing some building-wide initiatives to impact our ISASP scores. So it comes from the district first of like, what are our overall district goals? And then we dig down to the building level into that BSAT, that building student achievement team. And then it just keeps kind of layering down, like peeling the onion down. If that helps answer that question.
I can address one of your questions. In terms of the evaluation of the teacher, we never evaluate a teacher based off their student data. But what occurs all the time are continuous growth conversations about the students, aligning our curriculum to the voids that our students are seeing. That happens a lot. One of the things that this team over here has really made a concerted effort of is vertical and horizontal alignment. We haven't done that in a while, and they've really moved there. Where are the holes in our system? I will tell you this, the things that I see to answer those questions, I've been going into the places where we're piloting Amplify, and every single one of the teachers says this is so rigorous. So that tells you the amount of work, the writing, the reading, the responding that they're doing is that they've never done before. And so that's why I think that this tool is going to be different. And I've been a part of previous adoptions. And we can do all of the, I'm going to use one of Bonnie's terms, 95% group is like a vitamin, but you couldn't sustain yourself off vitamins. So you have to have all the meat and potatoes, and that's what Amplify is going to get for us. I believe paired with the learning, because you can acquire letters in the learning associated to it. Then you pair it with a vehicle that you can actually move things forward. And the tools in there are more advanced than I've seen. So the ability for our teachers to have really good tools, the knowledge, that's what's going to move things forward. The structure that you're talking about that exists for us. So depending on the building and how it's set up, The teachers are supported in those conversations that you are wanting to have through a coach, through a principal, and then maybe even a colleague. Those CTT teams, if you could see one, they sit down, they talk about, okay, how did you get this done? This is how I'm going to get, and those are facilitated conversations around improving that data. The other piece that I'd like to add to this, and this is a horizon conversation, is we've purchased a lot of library books, and we brainstorm all the time, but you think back to, there's got to be a culture of reading in our early grades as well. So what does it look like to read 30 minutes a night? And we're going to, a culture of reading. In this district, in this city, in this town, we read. And I think that that's critically important to get students applying all of these wonderful skills that they have. And that's a space we're going. And you think back to the programs that we've had in place to make sure that that happens. And that's a big next step for us. I'm very excited about that. And I know Diane, this team over here, has 1,000 ideas for how to do that. But a culture of reading around here, this is how we read. And it's an actual application of all the wonderful things that they're learning during the day.
I was going to add one thing to that really quickly because it had kind of come up over here, but when we were talking about special ed and our field test as well, one of the things that we keep hearing from our teachers is that the knowledge portion of it is allowing these students to be able to access, including our special education students, and they are demonstrating maybe some knowledge and some strengths that they weren't able to previously demonstrate through oral language and also through vocabulary, which is a really great thing to hear as well. So that's a positive for our special education and how we're helping to address and break down some of those silos between special ed and general ed as well.
Director Potts.
Okay, so assuming that everything is correct, everything is right on the money, okay? When do we see the results? What's the timeline? When can we expect to see results that are more significant than this? Because we've been chasing the data on scores, reading scores, and math scores for 35 years. And the same toast pops out of the toaster. And some of you have been around. We have done so much. We've had specialists, we've had coaches, we've had sustained silent reading. I have forgotten half of what we've done. But it doesn't seem to move the needle. And I think maybe what we really need to do is redefine what is literacy. Is there a difference between literacy, schoolhouse literacy, versus life literacy? Because you look at these. If you want to talk subgroups, my goodness, it's totally consistent. Hispanics, second highest scoring group. A percentage of them don't have trouble with English. But they can read and they can. It's very frustrating, as you know. But when is the time? When? 2 years? 3 years? Next year? We got to see a difference, or we got to redefine.
We have students sitting in seats every single day that we are so motivated to make a difference for. And this isn't just what I wish I had an answer. I want to say tomorrow. I want to say results tomorrow. What I can guarantee is the decisions that we are making around data, being data-driven district. Huge. We have to be, and we can't wait. That's why the progress monitoring is so mission critical for us, because then we're not waiting until a quarter. We're not waiting until semester or the end of the year to find out if students are succeeding. We are using our progress monitoring. The one piece that that we haven't talked about again is how integrated all of this is. We're talking about academics, ISASP and FAST. That data does not; those results don't happen in isolation. Those results occur from our SEBH work. They occur from the attendance. They occur with all of the other pieces that we're putting in place. I've worked in many, many different systems before, and I can tell you I am more than honored, and it is a privilege to be a part of Davenport right now because we are on the cusp of really seeing significant changes. And I'll tell you the other piece to this is that root cause analysis. What we haven't spent a lot of time in the past is really getting to the root cause of why the data what story the data is telling us. We are using root cause analysis now so that when we decide here, instead of just saying, okay, here's the data, here's what we're going to decide to do it, and we just start throwing things out there. When you do a root cause analysis, now we know, okay, this is what the data is telling us. The decision we're making on that root cause analysis is going to stick. That is going to be a game changer as well. So I am very optimistic. And again, we have such an amazing team. There are teachers that are working diligently and so tirelessly every single day to do the very thing that we're talking about, to make a difference and to change those data and those student outcomes for students.
Director Poston.
Is the 80% minimum goal, is that realistic? I mean, when you look at the charts here, we're 20 to 25% below the state numbers. So to me, why don't we at least get to the state level? I think the 80% goal is unrealistic. I'd be happy, and I think most of us in this room would be happy if we got at least to the state standards. The other thing is our attendance is still very poor, and that's got to have an effect on these kids, okay? So if they're not in class, they're not learning, and their scores are not going to improve. So I don't know if there's a way of pulling those figures out and looking at the the attendance of a child and then looking at their scores and seeing, okay, this is why this child's this far behind. I think we all know what the answer is probably going to be on that. But, how do you increase these scores with the poor attendance that we have?
And that's why attendance became a focus area for this year with the engagement piece. And the attendance, not only was the goal written, but now there's an attendance team. And that implementation team is meeting on a very regular basis so that they can pivot, make decisions, get the resources out to teachers, get the communication clear, and work together, because it's not just a team that's creating the plan, but it's implementing that plan, and it's a community effort, not just again at a district level. So it is all of us working together, and it's a big ship to turn, but knowing that we have the right people in the right place with an implementation plan so that we can get that attendance turned around too. Again, our results are driven by the systems we have in place, and now that we have district teams, we have DCSD Growing Excellence goals, we have implementation teams that are in place, monitoring and supporting these data, including our literacy team, our SEBH team, and our attendance team. Eyes on this all the time, and pivoting and creating resources and support and the professional learning that goes with it.
What do you feel would have the most single impact on a child that is struggling and the test scores are not improving? Interventionist, what would do that child the most good?
There's a lot of questions behind that one question. So it depends on what grade level we're talking. It depends on the student need. It depends on the student profile. And that's why we really need to be able to spend that time to identify what's going to work the best using that root cause analysis. So when we're doing our improvement plans, and problem solving process, we do that at a district level, but we do that at a building level. That's what our collaborative teacher teams do. They're going through a problem solving process. And then when we have individual students, so we have layer upon layer upon layer. So there isn't just one answer. What I will say is that we have to get the core tight and we have to get the core right in order to make a difference. That's a huge piece to this. The other puzzle piece that we have not talked about, that again, I am so optimistic, and our team is doing such an outstanding job. When we talk about a system, it's pre-K 12. So preschool is right here at the table. The department has done an outstanding job working with preschool. There's a visioning team with preschool right now that you've seen earlier, because we know when we can get that impact going and that movement, they're going to come into kindergarten at a different level once we have that. Now that's going to take time when our preschool students get to kindergarten, and then we start to see those results in 3rd and 5th and 10th grade. But that's part of this puzzle. We're not going to wait for that to happen. We're going to do all these other things because we have sophomores, we have juniors, we have seniors right now, today, that need things to make an impact so that their outcome is different.
Do you have any way of pulling out the numbers from these scores as far as identifying which kids went through preschool? Okay.
Yep. And we do actually have, and I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head, but we can work with TJ and, look at information. But we have looked at one of our performance indicators is the percent of students going into kindergarten, kindergarten ready, that attended preschool. I think that might have been part of the preschool presentation.
It's data we're going to pull coming into the legislative session, so we'll have one pager for it. Be fully armed. We'll have you ready, Kent.
Yeah.
Just a side note. So at the Iowa Association of School Boards, I sat in on one session on preschool, and it's something that I had never thought of before, but they had data that showed that even children that didn't go to preschool, say half the class went to preschool and the other half didn't, the kids that didn't go to preschool benefited from the other kids just from the social aspect. And so it's just the whole preschool thing is just so critical, and I think would have an impact on these figures.
I did want to say something about capitalizing on what you said with we have to start with that really solid, rigorous core, and at the same time, making sure those supports are in place for the students with the gaps and holes. We have to balance, it has to be both. When you said interventionists, they play such a critical role. And in the past, we haven't had that solid, rigorous core to match that really great intervention support. So I'm super excited to see a balance of both, because while the core is our priority and most important that all kids are getting that, we still have to make sure we're bringing those other kids up that have the gaps and holes. So it's a balance of both. So it's really...
That's why we work so well together. We need each other, and they need the team. Absolutely.
Director Beck.
Just a quick question. So I heard you say that one of the things that you are focusing on is making sure that implementation is, what did you say? If it's got to be tight and it's got to be right, or something like got to be right and tight. I don't know. Yeah, it rhymed. And I was going to say, time and time again, what I hear when I hear pieces on effective literacy or numeracy programs, and there's a new article that just came out today, or I heard about today, is the fidelity of implementation, and that it's not always the program, or the curriculum, it's how well people are actually using it. And so I think that brings to mind Director Barnes' question about certain levels of teacher turnover, because when you are having teacher turnover, which if I'm not mistaken, there's a few grades where that tends to happen a little bit more than other grades, you're going to potentially see less fidelity and skill in implementing whatever the curriculum is. And it has to be done right, or it doesn't really matter which program we're using. And so I guess I'm happy to hear that that's a focus. But I am also wholeheartedly with Director Poston that preschool does make a huge difference. A question related to Superintendent Schneckloff. Do we, even in kindergarten, do kids just go to the library and check out whatever books they want from the school library? Okay, to like read, even if they can't read it? Like, are they allowed to check out a book? I'm not saying like go to the high school section, but like, you know, no. I'm
There's
talking
some
about, like,
parameters.
no, but I mean, like, if I were a kid who checked out a book with words in it, you know, those level 2 readers or whatever they call them, I can't read those necessarily, but it's still a book. It's got pictures. Like my 5-year-old can't read, but he reads books all the time. And so is that something that we encourage? Are we limiting what kids are allowed to check out in terms of that? Or can they just go pick out stuff that's, I mean, obviously not the stuff on the top shelf, but
So there's a good balance of interest and also readability, right? Our teacher librarians are great and work with our classroom teachers and students on what are good fit books, just right fit books. You know, you've heard lots of different versions for that. But also a read aloud for a student who's interested in a book, even though I can't read it, very beneficial. So it's just a variety. They go weekly at the elementary level to get to check out books.
okay. Because, I mean, even if you can't read the words, it's beneficial to just have that exposure.
Along those lines, I really want to give a shout out to Pizza Hut and the Book It program, because my first grader, he's already ready to go with his 8 books for December. He wants to read them all in one night. So I think that's a huge thing that gets kids on board with doing that stuff. I kind of want to build on some of the questions Director Poston was asking about attendance. I'm 100% sure you can narrow it down to the building, to the student, and you can check their attendance for sure. And I'm sure that does play a factor into that. So one of my questions is, the professional development. What goes into that? So say you have a school, and I'm sure we have certain schools that have a higher tardy rate, kids missing and things like that. So then what goes into that professional development? Because just earlier we were talking about building amazing athletic facilities to get kids here. But what are we doing to get kids engaged and active in the classroom? What are we doing on that with that professional development? How are we implementing that to help our teachers engage those kiddos? Because clearly something's not working. I mean, and Director Potts kind of hit on it too, but there's a disparity with our Black students and our students with IEPs. What are we doing?
To get students engaged, not only in the classroom, but just in their school, and there is number one, just having them create a sense of hope and what their own vision is for attending and being a part of a school and learning environment. And I think that, again, your question can be answered by a multitude of different ways. And even within our department, we are doing some learning about what is engagement, because engagement, we don't have a common understanding or definition. And even with our learning, it's really opening our eyes about what engagement can look like and what the research says about engagement. And then we have CTE pathways. That's another way that we can get student interest to increase when they're attached to a pathway and they see their vision. What does the instructional practices, routines, and strategies look like and sound like in a classroom for learning, an authentic learning experience for students. What does the applied learning look like? So all of those pieces come together for, those instructional practices and routines that will increase engagement. And we're on the beginning side of that discussion and that learning, just even ourselves as a department, because then it crosses content areas. What does that look like in math class? What does it look like in social studies? Our CTE pathways, how do we increase those? I know through our IDEA DA review last spring, we recognized and have an action that we want to make sure that not only students with IEPs have access and opportunity, but how do we increase the numbers of students in our CTE pathways, students with IEPs in our CTE pathways when it's a good match. So again, lots of different avenues on that, but know that that's something that is on our horizon for sure.
Okay, so I'll really hone in on it on this one. Okay, so if you see you have a particular school and let's say 3 classrooms where the IEP student scores are really low, what does your professional development look like to hone in on that? I feel like we used to just throw stuff to the wall and see how it stuck, and now we're implementing things. So how does that professional development look like to target that specific group?
Mm-hmm. And that comes down to more of that personalized professional learning. So when we know that this is the building, that's part of that continuous improvement process. And the principals and the leaders, the building leaders, are going to be a big part of that. We have BSAT teams right now that are up and running and really learning their role about not only the health of the system within their building, but being able to identify what those needs are and then being able to reach out. And then that's where we'll partner. I don't know that it's so much that any of us would identify that. Not that we won't. There's a good chance that we'll see it too. But that's the building leadership and the building leadership teams that are doing really learning the skills to be able to identify what those needs are.
Okay, so I'm not really getting the answer I want, but I understand. Mike, to hone in on it even more, okay, so you have your professional development for it, and then the next go around, because these scores haven't gotten any better. So then do you come back with, okay, we tried this didn't work, but maybe if we tweaked it this way, it would work like this, or how does this work? Because I keep hearing you say there's multiple facets. I understand that 100%. And when Director Potts made the comment about 35 years, well, students change all the time. It's a different day and age now. If you had everything on YouTube channels, they would probably really hone in on it great because they love to watch YouTube all the time. But I'm trying to understand. We keep talking about professional development. We're doing these things, but this stuff isn't improving. So where's the disconnect, and what are we missing the mark on?
I think from a building perspective.
I'll try to answer that question. I do think that when we're in a role that I'm in right now, we get to absorb ourselves in a lot of theory and really embrace ourselves in the learning and the best practice. And then as a role in a building administrator, as a teacher, we're immersed in just the reality and everything that's going on. And so I've had a very unique opportunity to be in this job for 8 years and in a building then for 5 and coming back and understanding that an area of improvement of that is happening is this better liaison between the theory and the reality of what's happening, and bringing more leaders in across the district. Isn't in this building. The district is all of us, and how we are all like, are we going to do some of the hard lifting of what it is? Yes, but then it falls short if buildings don't continue that along. So I've seen just in my short stint here that better connection between the help of district jobs going into more buildings and buildings leaders coming back here to improve that more than I have in a decade, to be quite honest. I'm 21 years in this district. And so we can say what we say, and then in the buildings is what that has to do. And so just like I'm repeating myself, building that better partnership and to work through that. And it's happening. I can see it right at Central, like with that.
We have work we need to do in that area. No matter what great curriculum we hand them, it has to be coupled with engagement and instructional frameworks, and they have to go hand in hand. So did 95% work the way that we wanted it to? It didn't, because it wasn't a comprehensive full system. It was great with foundational skills, and we saw some great gains with that. With our new field test curriculums, they are comprehensive programs, which is super exciting. The engagement that you're going to hear in February from our teachers, they're going to talk about the knowledge strand and the books that they're going to the library to read about ancient civilizations, which we looked at that and we all said, no way are they going to like this. No way. And every teacher will not let me out of their door because they want to tell me how much their kids are loving that and reading grade level text, because it's all the same level text. I don't know the answer to your question. All of the things that they said are right, and we have work to do with it. And I think that's what's so exciting about the learning. The learning around the science of reading is what we are basing those decisions off of, which we haven't always had, right? More to-
Sorry, my son's like trying to he's finding my phone now because I didn't answer.
I would say, just to kind of wrap that all up, with the implementation science, we are learning so much as a system that to me is really exciting. We also have pieces in place with our coaches. Again, implementation science would tell us that we can't just put this out here. We can't just learn, have a professional learning and not have the coaching alongside of it with those fidelity and the supports. So that's what's exciting to me about any of the professional learning that's occurring, whether it's from the district lens based on priorities and based on data, to the building and what's happening at the building. We even have professional learning at collaborative teacher teams during CTTs, where a grade level team will say, whoa, where our data's not showing us what we need. We need to learn a little bit more about X, Y, and Z. So they'll reach out to a coach, or they'll reach out to any one of our specialists. This can be pre-K 12, and ask, what do you have? What can we do right here? So we have buildings that have identified this is where our data is telling us this is the professional learning we need. And then what is the coaching and implementation around that professional learning to change the skill set? So I think that, again, as we put all of those pieces in place, that's going to move the needle too.
Okay. One of my other questions, Bonnie, you had said something way early on in the presentation about how many staff members have been trained in letters training? My question was, you mentioned a number of how many have been trained. How many are yet to be trained that need to get done, and what is the time frame on getting that done?
So I think it's important to understand that letters training takes a good amount of time, right? It's a huge investment of time and professional development. So when we give that particular number, that means that that's all of our teachers that are at the elementary level. So we have teachers that are engaging in Unit 3 this year because they were with us last year. All of our new teachers, new to Davenport, they are part of a cohort that's in Unit 1. So we're providing it to all of our elementary teachers, and it's then just that cycle to continually work through where someone is at in their units of study to provide that. So it is being provided to any and all of our elementary teachers, separated from like our coaches and specialist teachers, because that doesn't necessarily apply to them, and they needed a different source for professional learning. But for the remainder of our teachers, it's being provided, and then we have that plan for how to continue to roll it for new people that join us.
Okay, thank you. And then one of my other questions, I think you had mentioned it way early on as well. I believe you said the ISASP data is on the parent portal and then they go over to parent-teacher conferences. My question is, do you actually know how many parents access the parent portal? And the reason I ask this is because I said this at a meeting a couple years ago, and I had my daughter was at Wood at the time, and Sherry Simpson Schultz had heard me say it, and she got on and looked, and my email wasn't even on there, and I always put my email on there when I sign my kid up, so I'd just be curious on how many parents are actually engaged on that actually know. And I imagine there's quite a few that don't come to conferences either. But at the same time, they need to be accountable as well, because if they're not getting their kid to school and things like that, they're just part of the problem as well. So I'd be curious to know on that. I feel like we kind of beat you guys up a little bit, and I apologize. But yeah, I myself personally, and I know like Director Potts had asked about like a hard date on when this stuff is not acceptable, and it needs to be better, and we have to do better. And I certainly hope in February it looks better, and we're starting to see some of that. I understand we did spend a ton of money on curriculum, and it takes time to implement that. But we have to do better at figuring out how we can address the needs of these kiddos. We have to really hone in on that, whether it's professional development or things like that. I understand it's at the building level, but if something's not working at that level, then things need to get switched around so we can start correcting this, because we're doing a disservice to our students. And I'm just very blunt on that. We have a lot of kids that are going to get left behind. I do 100% agree. Preschool is where we're going to get them, but we have to figure out how we're going to take care of them now, because these kiddos will be running everything someday, so we have to make sure they're set up for success. Does anyone have anything else? Thank you very much for the presentation. Director Potts, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.